Hey, so here we go. Happy Friday. We are going to 1 Samuel 17. I just absolutely love diving into the story of David and Goliath because every time I read it, there's something new, which there is throughout the Bible, but we're all so familiar with the story of David and Goliath that when we really dig into it a little bit deeper, it's mesmerizing, absolutely mesmerizing. So I talked about the armor being part of covenant yesterday. And so what I want to talk about today is whose armor are you wearing and who are you in covenant with? So if we're in 1 Samuel 17, let's go down to verse 31. So 1 Samuel 17:31. We're going to read a few verses here. It says, when David's words were heard and they were repeated to Saul, and David said, I got this. Who is this Philistine who defies the armies of Israel? So those words made it back to Saul. And it says, and he sent for him. So David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail him because of this Philistine. Your servant will go out and will fight him. This giant did not scare David. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go fight against this Philistine. You are only an adolescent, and he has been a warrior since his youth. And David said to Saul, your servant kept his father's sheep. And when there came a lion, or again a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it, and smote it, and delivered the lamb out of its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard, and smote it, and killed it. Your servant killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. Go back to what we talked about earlier this week. I'm getting so excited, I need to slow down. The word of being a function word, showing possession and relationship, that these armies belong to God. Whew, glory. Verse 37, David said, the Lord who delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a bronze helmet on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword over his armor, and then he tried to go, but he could not, for he was not used to it. And David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I'm not used to them. And David took them off. Listen to the Hebrew language. It is much, I'm going to read it in King James. Listen. So, as Saul armed or clothed David with his clothes, armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass on his head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go. He could not go. He tried to go, but he could not, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David took them off. He took them off. I have not proved it. That word proved there in the Hebrew means to test. I have not tested this armor. I have not tried to prove it, or put to the proof or test. See, David couldn't wear Saul's armor. David wasn't in covenant with Saul. But what David did in the previous verses, in verses 34 and 35 and 36, where David said to Saul, your servant kept his father's sheep, and when there came a lion or again a bear and took a lamb, I went after it, and I smote it, and I delivered the lamb out of its mouth. And when it arose up to kill me, I caught it by the beard and killed it. See, David had proved his covenant with God. He had proved that whatever power, dunamis, that the enemy put forth, whatever destruction harm that the enemy intended to do, David, as a child of God, had jurisdiction over that power. And so David trusted. He had proved his covenant with God. And that's why David continuously says, this uncircumcised Philistine, this uncircumcised Philistine. And you can go from 1 Samuel, it just starts in 17, and notice how many times David says this uncircumcised Philistine. You can read it in verse 26. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of Jehovah, of the living God? But see, for David, that was a reminder, because circumcision was an outward sign. I mean, it was a symbol of being in covenant, not to be broken, covenant with God, which that covenant is where he gives us his resources over ours, his armor, his power, his abilities instead of our own. That's exchange. So David says, this uncircumcised Philistine, he is not in covenant with God. I am in covenant with God, and I have proven him over and over and over again. And though this power, this enemy looks different, he is the same. It is the forces of darkness. It's the same power that's being exerted, and I have rule over that. No more. He doesn't get to torment us anymore. Glory to God. Can you tell? I love David and Goliath, because these are places where David truly recognized who he was because of who his God was. Glory to God. Oh, we better stop because we're at 7 minutes. I'll see y'all tomorrow for our live video about 9 o'clock. Bye, y'all.